I stand in front of the gilded mirror, watching my engagement ring catch the light. 3 carats of pure manipulation wrapped around my finger like a golden shackle. The ballroom behind me buzzes with the chatter of Boston's elite, but all I hear is the clock ticking down to my public execution. Valentina, that's me, the marketing manager who dared to capture the heart of Karen Wellington's precious son. Or so the society papers say. There you are, darling. Ethan's reflection appears beside mine, his hand settling on my waist. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect posture, everything his mother demanded of her golden child. Mother's about to make the toast. She's been planning this moment for weeks. Of course she has. I force my lips into the smile I've practiced 1,000 times. Wouldn't want to disappoint her. The grand ballroom of the Wellington estate stretches before us like a battlefield dressed in crystal and silk. 200 of Boston's finest gathered to celebrate our engagement, or rather to witness Karen's latest power play. Sophie catches my eye from across the room, raising her champagne glass in silent support. At least one person here isn't buying into this charade. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen's voice cuts through the crowd like a diamond through glass. She stands at the center of the room, commanding attention in her Valentino dress that probably costs more than my yearly salary. We're gathered here today to celebrate not just an engagement, but a merger of families. The crowd titters. Marcus, Ethan's father, smirks from his position beside his wife. I feel Ethan's hand tighten on my waist. When Ethan first mentioned he was dating someone from marketing, Karen continues, her pause calculated for maximum effect, I must admit, I was concerned. After all, the Wellington name carries certain expectations. My chest tightens. This isn't going where I thought it would. But then I realized, perhaps this is exactly what our family needs. Someone to handle our public image. She smiles, all teeth and no warmth. Though I do hope, Valentina dear, that you'll consider pursuing something more befitting your new position. Perhaps as a full-time mother. The Wellington legacy must continue after all. The room erupts in polite laughter. I feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I keep my smile frozen in place. Years of practice hiding my emotions from difficult clients finally paying off. And of course, Karen adds, lifting her glass higher, we've already arranged for Ethan to take over as CEO of our East Coast operations. Can't have our future daughter-in-law out-earning her husband, can we? More laughter. Ethan's hand drops from my waist. He's not even looking at me anymore. To the happy couple, Karen concludes, her voice dripping with false sweetness. May they understand their proper places in this family. The crowd raises their glasses. I catch Sophie's expression, pure fury on my behalf. But it's Daniel, Ethan's younger brother, whose reaction interests me most. He's watching his mother with an expression I've never seen before. Calculated hatred. Darling, Ethan whispers, finally noticing my rigid posture. Mother means well. She's just traditional. Traditional? Like the way she systematically destroyed my father's construction company last year. Like the mysterious circumstances surrounding my mother's death 15 years ago. A death that I'm beginning to suspect has Wellington fingerprints all over it. I raise my glass, meeting Karen's triumphant gaze across the room. Thank you, Mother Wellington, I say, my voice carrying clearly, for making everything so crystal clear. She doesn't catch the edge in my voice, but Sophie does. So does Daniel. They're the only ones who see my smile shift from practiced politeness to something harder, colder. Karen Wellington just handed me the perfect weapon, her own arrogance. She thinks she's putting me in my place, but all she's done is show me exactly where to strike. I take a sip of champagne, already plotting. This engagement party isn't an end, it's a beginning. And Karen has no idea what she just started. The morning after the engagement party, I sit across from my father at our usual diner, pushing eggs around my plate while he reads the society page coverage of my humiliation. His knuckles whiten around the newspaper edges. I always knew Karen Wellington was cruel, he says finally, but to do this so publicly. Did you know them? Before? The question slips out before I can stop it. I've never asked about his connection to the Wellingtons, despite suspecting there's more to the story than he's told me. He sets down the paper, and for a moment, I see something flash across his face. Fear, maybe, or anger, but it's gone before I can be sure. Boston's a small world when you're in real estate development. The bell above the diner door chimes. Ethan walks in, spotting us immediately. Perfect timing, as always. My father's expression closes off like a vault. "There's my beautiful fiancé," Ethan announces, sliding into the booth beside me. He kisses my cheek, all performance. "And future father-in-law. I hope you enjoyed last night's celebration." My father's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Quite the speech your mother gave. Mother can be traditional." Ethan's hand finds mine under the table, squeezing too tight. "But she means well. Actually, that's why I'm here. She'd like to have lunch with you today, Valentina, to smooth things over." I extract my hand from his grip. "I have meetings all day." "I've already cleared your schedule with your supervisor." His smile doesn't waver. Mother's very persuasive when she wants something. The implications sink in. Karen's reach extends into my workplace now. I meet my father's gaze across the table, seeing my own alarm reflected there. "You know what?" I stand abruptly. "I need some air. Excuse me." Outside, the autumn air bites at my skin. I hear footsteps behind me. Ethan, of course, always following his mother's script. "You're being difficult," he says, catching my arm. "Mother's trying to make amends." I turn to face him. "Like she made amends with the Harrison family." He flinches. "The Harrison family, their development company, went bankrupt last year after dealing with Wellington Enterprises. I discovered the connection during my background research on Karen." "That was business," he says carefully. "This is family." "Is there a difference in your mother's world?" His phone buzzes, Karen's special ringtone. He answers immediately, turning away from me. "Yes, Mother. No, she's being difficult. I understand. Yes, I'll handle it." Handle it. Like I'm a problem to be managed. When he faces me again, his expression has hardened. "The lunch isn't optional, Valentina. Either you show up willingly, or Mother will make things very uncomfortable for you at work." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting you." He steps closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know what Mother's capable of when she's crossed." But I do know. I've spent months piecing together the trail of destroyed careers and broken lives left in Karen Wellington's wake, including, I suspect, my mother's death, though I can't prove it yet. "Fine," I say, forcing a smile. "Tell your mother I'll be there." Relief floods his face. He kisses my forehead, missing how I stiffen at his touch. "That's my girl. I'll have the car pick you up at noon." I watch him leave, then pull out my phone to text Sophie. "Need your help. Lunch with the devil today. Time to start phase 2. Her reply comes instantly. "Already on it." "Daniel reached out, says he has information we need." I glance back through the diner window. My father sits alone now, staring at his coffee like it holds answers. He looks older suddenly, weighted down by secrets I'm only beginning to understand. My phone buzzes again. Sophie sending an address. A meeting point with Daniel, away from his family's watching eyes. If he's really willing to turn against his mother, it could change everything. I straighten my spine, checking my reflection in a nearby window. The woman staring back at me isn't the same one who endured last night's humiliation. She's harder now, sharper at the edges. Karen wants to have lunch? Fine. I'll sit across from her, play the dutiful future daughter-in-law. But while she's busy trying to put me in my place, she won't notice me learning all her weaknesses. After all, she taught me herself. The best attacks come disguised as submission. The private dining room at Leblanc feels like a trap, all crystal and white tablecloths. Karen sits across from me, perfectly composed, while Marcus hovers near the window, phone pressed to his ear. Their voices drift around me, discussing business as if I'm not here. "The Harrison portfolio," Marcus says into his phone. "Yes, all of it. Transfer everything by Monday." My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. The Harrison portfolio, my father's former business partner. The same company Karen destroyed last year. "More wine, dear?" Karen's voice drips honey. She's watching me, always watching. No, thank you. I set down my fork. Actually, I'm curious about something. The Harrisons, wasn't their daughter in my class at Boston Prep? Karen's smile tightens. Perhaps, though they've relocated since their unfortunate business decisions. Marcus ends his call, joining us at the table. Speaking of business, Valentina, we have a proposition for you. We've been discussing your role in the company, Karen adds. Post-wedding, of course. I feel my phone vibrate, probably Sophie waiting nearby with Daniel. But I can't check it now, not when I'm finally getting close to something real. What kind of role? A ceremonial one? Karen says smoothly. You'll need to resign from your current position naturally. Can't have our daughter-in-law working under others. And my father's remaining contracts? Marcus sets down his wine glass too hard. Karen's hand touches his arm. A warning. Your father's business dealings are his concern, she says. Though we could assist if you're amenable to our terms. The pieces click together. They're not just trying to control me, they're using me to get to my father's remaining assets. The same way they used the Harrison's daughter to... The door opens. Ethan walks in, followed by a familiar face that stops my heart. James Harrison. My former classmate's father, looking nothing like the confident businessman I remember. Sorry I'm late, Ethan announces. James had some paperwork to finish. James won't meet my eyes. His hands shake as he sets a folder on the table. Perfect timing, Karen says. Valentina, dear, we need you to sign as a witness. Just a small matter regarding some property transfers. I open the folder. Inside, I find documents transferring my father's remaining development rights to Wellington Enterprises. They've forged his signature, perfectly, professionally. But it needs a witness to be legal. They want me to be that witness. James? My voice comes out steadier than I feel. Are you okay? Just sign it, Valentina, Ethan says quietly. Please. But I'm watching James. The defeat in his posture, the fear when he glances at Karen. This is how they do it. How they've always done it. Using family against family, forcing people to destroy themselves. I stand up slowly. I need to use the restroom. Sit down, Marcus snaps, but Karen raises a hand. Let her go. She needs time to understand what's best for everyone. In the hallway, I finally check my phone. 3 messages from Sophie. Daniel found the files. It's worse than we thought. Your mother's accident. It wasn't an accident. My hands shake as I type. Get everything to my father. Now. When I return to the dining room, they're waiting exactly as I left them. Like predators, patient and confident. Ready to sign? Karen asks. I pick up the pen, studying its weight. 15 years ago, my mother died in a car accident after discovering something about Wellington Enterprises. Now I'm sitting across from the people responsible, watching them try to destroy another family. Actually, I say, I have a counter-proposal. I pull out my phone, opening the recording app that's been running since I entered the restaurant. Karen's eyes narrow as she realizes what I'm holding. You really should be more careful discussing illegal property transfers in public spaces, I say, especially when threatening people into compliance. Marcus stands abruptly. Ethan reaches for my arm, but I step back. You have no idea what you're doing, Karen says, her mask finally cracking. No, I reply. I think for the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. I turn to James. The Harrisons send their regards and their evidence. The color drains from Karen's face. In this moment, watching her perfect world begin to crack, I finally understand. Revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about saving yourself. Sophie's apartment feels like the last safe place in Boston. We sit surrounded by papers and laptops, piecing together the puzzle of Wellington Enterprises' corruption. Daniel paces by the window, his shadow cutting through the afternoon light. They killed her, I say, staring at the accident report from 15 years ago. My mother wasn't investigating real estate fraud. She found evidence of money laundering. Daniel stops pacing. The offshore accounts. That's why they're so desperate to get control of your father's company now. They need a legitimate business to... A knock at the door silences us. Sophie checks the security camera and tenses. It's Ethan. My engagement ring feels like it's burning my finger. Let him in. Ethan enters, his usual polish cracked around the edges. His eyes land on Daniel first, then the scattered documents. So this is where you've been hiding, brother. Not hiding, Daniel says. Just finally choosing a side. Ethan runs a hand through his hair. A gesture so like his father's, it makes my skin crawl. Val, we need to talk. Alone. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of them. He moves closer, lowering his voice anyway. Mother knows about the recording. She's prepared to make things very difficult for your father if you don't hand it over. More difficult than destroying his business? Or having his wife killed? Ethan flinches. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stand, forcing him to step back. Your mother didn't just kill my mother. She's been systematically destroying families for years. The Harrisons were just the latest. Everything she did was to protect our family. Was it protection when she arranged Daniel's girlfriend's deportation last year? Daniel's sharp intake of breath tells me he didn't know I'd discovered that particular secret. Ethan's face goes pale. That was business, he says weakly. It's all business with your family, isn't it? I move to the window where a manila envelope sits ready. Which is why you'll understand what I have to do next. I hand him the envelope. He opens it, scanning the contents with growing horror. These are copies of everything, I tell him. Bank records, falsified documents, witness statements about my mother's accident. The originals are all ready with the FBI. You're bluffing. Check your phone. As if on cue, his phone buzzes. He reads the message, colour draining from his face. Mother's being questioned by federal agents, along with your father and half the board. I twist the engagement ring off my finger. Consider this my resignation from the Wellington family. He grabs my arm. You don't want to do this. We can still fix things. Like you fixed things for the Harrisons? Daniel steps forward. Or my girlfriend? Or Valentina's mother? I didn't know. Ethan's grip tightens. About any of it, I swear. But you suspected, I say quietly. And you chose to look away. Sophie moves between us, forcing Ethan to release me. I think you should leave. He backs toward the door, desperation replacing his usual confidence. Val, please. Whatever Mother did, I'm not her. No, I agree. You're worse. She at least owns what she is. After he's gone, Daniel turns to me. You really sent everything to the FBI? Not yet. I pick up my phone. But Karen doesn't know that. Right now, she's probably destroying evidence we haven't even found yet. Sophie grins. And security cameras are recording every minute of it. We have 48 hours before she realizes the FBI isn't actually investigating, I say. That's how long we have to find what she's trying to hide. Daniel pulls out his own phone. I can get us into the office tonight. Security still trusts me. I look at the accident report on the table at my mother's name in cold black type. Karen thought she could bury the truth under years of manipulation and fear. She didn't count on her victims finding each other. Tonight, then, I say, picking up the engagement ring. One last performance as the future Mrs. Wellington. The ring catches the light as I slip it back on, no longer a shackle but a key. Karen taught me well, the best attacks come disguised as submission, and I'm about to become her star pupil. Wellington Enterprises' 40th floor boardroom feels like a glass cage at midnight. Daniel works at Karen's computer while I rifle through Marcus's files, both of us racing against dawn. Sophie monitors the security feeds from her laptop, our only warning system if someone arrives. Found something, Daniel says, his voice tight. A series of transfers to a shell company called Meridian Holdings. Started the week before your mother's accident. My hands shake as I photograph the documents. Same company that bought out the Harrisons? And 6 other families in the past decade. He clicks through more files. All competitors or threats to Wellington's expansion. Sophie's voice crackles through our earpieces. Movement in the lobby. Security's doing their rounds early. I grab the last folder, but something falls out. A photograph. My mother, sitting at this very table, 15 years younger. The date stamp matches the week before her death. The elevator dings. Someone's coming up, Sophie warns. Not security, executive override code. Daniel closes the computer. We need to go. Wait. I flip the photo over. There's writing on the back, meeting with Catherine Mills, Project Phoenix discussion. Val, now. Daniel grabs my arm. The elevator's at 38, 39. We slip into the executive washroom just as the doors open. Through the crack, I see Karen stride in, still wearing her dinner clothes. Marcus follows, looking haunted. The files have to be here, Karen says. That little bitch knows something. If she had proof, we'd be arrested already. Marcus paces, another habit Ethan inherited. Maybe we should consider her offer. To step down quietly? Karen laughs. The moment we lose control, everything unravels. The offshore accounts, Phoenix, all of it. My phone vibrates. Sophie texting that security's heading up too. We're trapped. What about Ethan? Marcus asks. He's still loyal. For now, but he's weak like his brother. One push from that girl and he'll crumble. I feel Daniel tense beside me. The security elevator pings. Mrs. Wellington? A guard's voice. Sorry to disturb you, but we detected unauthorized access to this floor. Karen's heels click closer to our hiding spot. Check everything. If anyone's here, I want them found. My heart pounds so loud I'm sure they'll hear it. Daniel's hand finds mine in the dark, squeezing once. A signal. He bursts out of the bathroom, startling everyone. Mother! Father! What are you doing here? Daniel? Karen recovers quickly. We could ask you the same thing. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get some work done. He moves toward the elevator, drawing their attention. Though clearly this is a bad time. I slip out while they're distracted, staying low behind the desks, almost to the second elevator. Check the bathroom, Karen orders the guard. I freeze. If they find evidence someone else was here, Daniel's cover is blown. So I do the one thing they won't expect. I stand up. Looking for me, Mother Wellington? Karen whirls around. For a split second, real fear crosses her face. She's seeing my mother's ghost in the darkness. What is this? Marcus demands. I hold up the photograph. Project Phoenix. That's what my mother discovered, isn't it? Before her convenient accident. Val, Daniel warns, but I'm done hiding. She was going to expose you. I step closer to Karen. Just like the Harrisons tried to. Like all the others you destroyed. Karen's composure returns. Careful, dear. Wild accusations can be dangerous. So can evidence. I reach for my phone, but it's not in my pocket. Karen holds it up, smiling. Looking for this. You really should be more careful where you leave your things. At the dinner party, for instance. My blood runs cold. She's known all along. Security, she says smoothly. Please escort my future daughter-in-law out. And Daniel? Her voice hardens. We'll discuss your involvement later. As the guards lead me to the elevator, Karen calls out, Oh, and Valentina. Do give your father my regards. Such a shame about his new development project falling through tomorrow. The doors close on her triumphant smile. In my earpiece, Sophie whispers, Val, what do we do now? I watch the floor numbers descend, each one bringing me closer to a decision. Karen thinks she's won, that she's beaten me the same way she beat my mother. But she forgot something crucial. My mother fought alone. I touch my engagement ring, where I hid the real memory card. Tell Lily to release the first batch of documents to the press. It's time everyone learned about Project Phoenix. The game isn't over. It's just getting started. The Wellington Enterprises annual gala feels like a funeral dressed in designer clothes. News of Project Phoenix has been spreading through Boston's business circles for 3 days, and I can see the whispers following Karen across the ballroom. But she's still smiling, still commanding the room like nothing's wrong. I adjust my black evening gown, the one Ethan's parents bought me, their perfect puppet daughter-in-law. Sophie's voice comes through my earpiece. FBI's reviewing the evidence. They'll move within hours. But hours might be too late. I watch Daniel weave through the crowd, pale and shaken. He reaches me just as Karen takes the stage. She knows, he whispers, about everything. The evidence, The FBI, all of it. Distinguished guests, Karen's voice fills the room. Before we begin tonight's festivities, I have an announcement. My phone buzzes, a text from my father. They're seizing the company, all assets frozen. Our family has always valued transparency, Karen continues, her eyes finding mine in the crowd, which is why I must address the recent rumors about Project Phoenix. The room goes silent. Even the servers stop moving. Project Phoenix was indeed a restructuring initiative, she says smoothly, one that unfortunately required difficult decisions about certain struggling companies, including Mills Construction. My father's company. My mother's legacy. What we didn't know, Karen's voice hardens, was that Catherine Mills had been embezzling funds for years, putting not just her company but dozens of families at risk. The blood drains from my face. She's rewriting history, turning my mother into the villain. Thankfully, her daughter's recent actions helped us uncover the full scope of her crimes. Karen's smile is razor-sharp. Valentina, dear, would you join me? All eyes turn to me. It's a trap, but refusing would only confirm her lies. I walk to the stage, each step feeling like I'm walking to my execution. Karen embraces me, whispering in my ear, "Check your phone." A new message appears, security footage from 15 years ago. My mother arguing with someone in her office, taking documents, getting into her car. "We tried to protect you from the truth," Karen says loud enough for everyone to hear. "About the accident, about what your mother was running from that night." The room spins. This can't be real. But now, Karen continues, Valentina has graciously agreed to help us make things right. Haven't you, dear? She's orchestrated everything perfectly. If I expose her now, she'll destroy my mother's reputation forever. If I play along, everything we've worked for disappears. Actually, I start, but Ethan suddenly appears beside me. "Mother," he says, "I think it's time we showed everyone the real Project Phoenix files." Karen's grip on my arm tightens. "Ethan, don't..." "The ones showing how you and father orchestrated Catherine Mills' accident." He turns to the crowd. "The same way you tried to arrange one for Valentina last night." Gasps ripple through the room. Marcus steps forward, but Daniel blocks his path. "Security!" Karen snaps. "Remove them! Federal agents!" The ballroom doors burst open. "Everyone stay where you are!" In the chaos that follows, I see Karen's mask finally crack. But it's not the FBI she's staring at. It's Ethan. "You chose her," she says, disbelief coloring her voice. "Over family?" "No, Mother." Ethan takes my hand. "I chose justice. Something you taught me about, remember?" As the agents approach, Karen turns to me one last time. "You think this is victory? You've destroyed everything. Your mother's legacy, your future, this family." "No," I say quietly. "You did that 15 years ago. I'm just finishing what my mother started." They lead Karen and Marcus away, but I feel no triumph, just emptiness and questions that may never have answers. Later, in the quiet of the emptying ballroom, Ethan finds me staring at my mother's old photograph. "The security footage," he says. "It was doctored. We found the original in Father's private safe." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed Mother to believe she'd won." He touches my shoulder, "Just like you taught me." I look at him, really look at him, and see something I've missed before, the cost of revenge written in the shadows under his eyes. "What happens now?" I ask. He doesn't answer. Some questions don't have easy answers, and some victories feel more like wounds that may never heal. The holding cell at Boston Police Department feels smaller than my childhood closet. Karen sits across from me, still elegant despite the orange jumpsuit. No makeup, no designer clothes, but somehow she looks more dangerous than ever. "You know why I'm here," I say. "To gloat?" Her smile hasn't changed. "How disappointing. I thought I taught you better than that." "You taught me plenty." I place my mother's photograph on the metal table between us. Like how to arrange an accident that looks natural. She doesn't even glance at the photo. Your mother made her choices. just like you've made yours. Did she choose to discover Project Phoenix, or did you choose to silence her? Project Phoenix saved this family. Karen leans forward. Everything I did was to protect what we built, something you'll never understand. The door opens. Daniel enters carrying a thick folder. Karen's composure cracks for just a moment. "Hello, Mother," he says quietly. "The FBI has some interesting questions about Maria." Karen goes very still. "Who?" "My girlfriend, the one you had deported." Daniel sits beside me. "Turns out her immigration papers were perfect until someone falsified evidence of fraud. Someone with access to Wellington Enterprise resources." "You always were too soft," Karen says. "Like your father." "No," Daniel replies. "I was just waiting. Like Valentina." I open the folder, spreading out documents. Bank statements, emails, death certificates. A pattern of destruction spanning decades. 15 families, I say. Not just my mother, not just the Harrisons. 15 lives you destroyed to build your empire. "I built something lasting." Karen's voice hardens. "What have you built except revenge? Justice." I push forward one final document. "This is a confession, detailing everything. Sign it, and we ensure Ethan stays out of the investigation." Her eyes narrow. "You'd use my son against me? Now who's becoming like me?" "The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. More than you gave any of your victims." The silence stretches. Through the observation window, I sense Ethan watching, though I haven't looked at him since he chose sides at the gala. "You know what your mother said that night?" Karen asks suddenly. "She said she felt sorry for my children, that no amount of money could make up for having me as a mother." She laughs, bitter and sharp. "And now here you are, proving her right. Sign the confession." "Or what? You'll tell everyone what I am?" She gestures around the cell. "They already know. The mighty Karen Wellington, exposed and ruined. But tell me, Valentina, what are you, now that your revenge is complete?" I stand, gathering the documents. "Sign or don't sign, either way you've lost." "Have I?" Her smile returns. "Look in the mirror, dear. You've become exactly what you hated. Calculating, ruthless, willing to sacrifice anything for your goals. I may have lost my empire, but I've created my greatest legacy. You." The truth of her words hits like a physical blow. I see myself reflected in the observation window, poised, controlled, every bit the person Karen trained me to be. "You're wrong," Daniel says, but I touch his arm. "No, she's right." I turn back to Karen. "You did shape me. You taught me how to play this game, but you forgot something crucial." "And what's that?" "My mother taught me something too." I reach for the door. "She taught me when to walk away." "That's it?" Karen calls after me. "All this plotting and you're just leaving?" "The confession is for the FBI now. Your fate is out of my hands." I pause at the threshold. "That's the difference between us, Karen. You needed to control everything. I just needed the truth." In the hallway, Ethan waits. He looks like he wants to speak, but no words come. "I'm sorry," I say, and mean it. For all of it. He nods, understanding what I can't say. That some victories cost too much. That some bridges can't be rebuilt. Behind me, I hear Karen calling for her lawyer. Always fighting, always controlling, until the very end. But her voice fades as I walk away, replaced by a memory of my mother's laugh, bright and free and finally at peace. Some revenge isn't about destruction at all. Sometimes it's about choosing to be something different than what they tried to make you. My mother's headstone looks different in the morning light. I've always visited at sunset, when shadows make everything feel heavier. But today, as I place fresh flowers beside her name, the marble gleams almost hopefully. "I thought I'd find you here." My father's voice steady and familiar. He sits beside me on the cool grass, his tie loosened from another day of rebuilding our company from the ashes of Wellington Enterprises. "The verdict came in," I say. He nods. 20 years for Karen, 15 for Marcus. "And the restitution payments to the families?" "Being processed. The Harrisons got their company back this morning. He pauses. Daniel's doing good work, restructuring everything. The mention of Daniel brings thoughts of Ethan, but I push them away. Some bridges stay burned. There's something else, my father says, pulling out an envelope. They found this in Karen's private safe. It's addressed to you. The paper feels heavy in my hands. Inside, I find a photograph I've never seen before. My mother and Karen, both young, both smiling, standing in front of Mills Construction. They were friends, my father says quietly, before everything. Karen was different then. Ambitious but not cruel. Your mother saw the changes happening, tried to help her. He trails off. Until Karen chose power over friendship. Until she forgot who she was. I study the photograph. These two women frozen in time before tragedy rewrote everything. Did you know? All these years? I suspected, but proving it meant risking losing you too. His hand finds mine. I couldn't take that chance. A text from Sophie lights up my phone. Board meeting in an hour. Ready? Go, my father says. Your mother would be proud of what you've built from all this. The Wellington building looks different now. Its imposing facade somehow less threatening. In the lobby, Lily greets me with coffee and updates about the transition. The elevator feels lighter as it carries me to the top floor. The boardroom is full when I enter. Daniel sits at the head of the table, no longer the uncertain younger son, but a leader in his own right. The other board members, mostly new faces, untainted by Karen's influence, nod in greeting. Before we begin, Daniel says, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, this company was built on corruption. Yes, we're related to the people who caused immeasurable harm. But today, we start making it right. He gestures to the presentation screen where a new company name glows. Phoenix Mills Group. My breath catches. Daniel continues. A joint venture between what's left of Wellington Enterprises and the restored Mills Construction. A chance to rebuild what was broken. The boardroom door opens. Ethan steps in, carrying architectural plans. Our eyes meet briefly, not with romance or regret, but with understanding. We're different people now, shaped by choices we can't undo. The first project, Ethan says, spreading the plans on the table, is a community development center, built on the land where Project Phoenix originally started. I study the plans, seeing echoes of both our mothers in the design. Strength and beauty, ambition and compassion balanced in glass and steel. There's one more thing, Daniel adds. He slides a folder toward me. We found evidence that Karen wasn't working alone 15 years ago. There were other board members involved in covering up what happened to your mother. My hand hovers over the folder. Inside lies more secrets, more corruption, more fuel for revenge. But I think of Karen in her prison cell, of how revenge consumed her long before it touched me, of how easy it would be to continue this cycle of destruction. I push the folder back. Send it to the FBI. Let justice handle it this time. Daniel nods, understanding. Ethan's shoulders relax slightly. Around the table, the board members exchange glances, respect, perhaps, or relief. The morning sun streams through the windows, catching on my engagement ring. I twist it off, placing it on the table, not as a gesture of defeat or victory, but as a choice to be something different than what pain made me. Now, I say, turning to the plans, let's build something lasting. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about creating something better from the ruins they left behind.
You don't even have a real job. Just get out. You work from home freeloader. My sister screamed while my parents nodded in agreement. They had moved into my house uninvited, taken over my space, and now had the audacity to kick me out because my puppy had an accident on clothes carelessly left on the floor. As I packed my bags and left with my beloved Chihuahua Max, I smiled knowing what they didn't. I had finally put the house in my name last month, and was about to teach them all a valuable lesson about respect. I'm Daniel, a 34-year-old professional software developer. 5 years ago, I switched from corporate life to freelancing, creating custom e-commerce solutions for clients worldwide. My home office setup allows me to work efficiently while maintaining an excellent work-life balance. My income is more than sufficient, my client list is impressive, and I genuinely love what I do. My comfortable 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood was originally owned by my late grandfather, who left it to me in his will with the stipulation that the property transfer would occur on my 34th birthday. For years, I lived there as the designated beneficiary, but the official title remained in my grandfather's estate until recently. The invasion began unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning in March. I was on a video call with an important international client when the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by aggressive knocking. After quickly excusing myself, I opened the door to find my parents standing there with 4 large suitcases. "Daniel, there you are," my mother exclaimed without even a greeting. "We decided to move in. The condo's been sold, and we close next week." I stood there stunned. "What? You sold your condo? Why didn't you tell me?" My father brushed past me, wheeling 2 suitcases inside. "We mentioned it at Christmas, remember? Anyway, we got a great offer, couldn't pass it up." They had most certainly not mentioned this at Christmas or any other time. But before I could formulate a response, they were already touring the house, discussing which bedroom they would take and what furniture of mine needed to be upgraded. "Mom, Dad, I'm in the middle of a work call. We need to talk about this, but I can't right now," I explained, trying to remain calm. "Oh, that computer stuff you do," my mother said dismissively. "Well, go back to your little games. We'll get settled in." With no choice but to return to my client, I reluctantly left them to continue their invasion. By the time my call ended 40 minutes later, they had already rearranged my living room and kitchen to their liking. The conversation that followed was frustrating and one-sided. According to them, they had always planned to move in with me after selling their condo. In their minds, since the house technically still belonged to my grandfather's estate at that time, they had just as much right to live there as I did, despite the fact that I had been the sole occupant for 5 years and my grandfather so clearly stated his intentions. "We're your parents, Daniel. You can't just leave us homeless," my mother said tearfully when I suggested they should have discussed this with me first. "You have all this space just for yourself. It's selfish," my father added. Trapped by familial obligation and their tearful manipulation, I reluctantly agreed to a temporary arrangement until they found a new place. Little did I know that temporary in their vocabulary meant permanent. The criticism started subtly at first. Comments about my work schedule, questioning whether I was actually working when they saw me at my computer. Remarks about how my cousin Edward, their favorite comparison, had a real job with benefits at an accounting firm. "I don't understand why you sit at home all day," my mother would say while interrupting me during important calls. "People your age should be in an office, building a career." "I have built a career, Mom," I explained patiently. "I make more now than I did at my corporate job, and I have better work-life balance." "If you say so," she'd reply doubtfully. "I just worry about your future." 3 weeks into their stay, with no signs of them house hunting, my sister Megan appeared on our doorstep with her own set of luggage. "Craig and I are separating," she announced, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. "Mom said I could stay here for a while." Once again, I wasn't consulted. Once again, I was outvoted 3-1 when I objected. Megan, who worked as an administrative assistant at a local company, immediately aligned with our parents in criticizing my lifestyle. "Must be nice to roll out of bed and call it going to work," she'd sneer as I headed to my home office at 7 a.m., earlier than she left for her job. "At least I have a real job where people can see me working," she'd say at dinner, despite the fact that I earned considerably more than she did. My attempts to explain the nature of remote work fell on deaf ears. In their minds, if I wasn't commuting to an office building, I wasn't really working. I was playing on the computer. 2 months into this unwanted cohabitation, my mental health was suffering. My once peaceful home had become a constant source of stress. My work productivity was declining due to frequent interruptions and the general tension in the house. That's when my friend Lisa called with an unexpected opportunity. Her family's Chihuahua had just had puppies, and she knew I'd always wanted a dog. "They're ready for homes now," she said. "There's a little black one with the sweetest personality. I think he'd be perfect for you." In a moment of impulse, perhaps seeking some companionship that wouldn't criticize me, I agreed. Max entered my life the next day, a tiny bundle of energy and unconditional love. My family's reaction was predictably negative. "You brought a dog into the house without asking us?" my mother exclaimed, as if it wasn't actually my house. "Dogs smell," my father complained. "And who's going to clean up after it?" "I will," I assured them. "Max is my responsibility. I'll take care of everything." "You can barely take care of yourself," Megan muttered. "This is so typical of you, making impulsive decisions." Despite their initial objections, Max's charm proved difficult to resist. Within days, I'd catch my mother sneaking him treats and my father letting him curl up on his lap during evening TV. Even Megan would play with him when she thought no one was watching. For a brief while, Max seemed to bring a truce to our household, but the peace was short-lived. The incident occurred on a Friday afternoon. I had stepped out to pick up a prescription, leaving Max at home. I'd asked Megan to keep an eye on him since she was home from work early that day. When I returned, the house was in chaos. Megan was screaming, holding a blouse that had apparently been on her bedroom floor. Max had had an accident on it, a relatively minor issue that could be solved with a simple wash. "Your stupid dog ruined my new blouse," she shrieked when I walked in. "You need to pay for this." "If you had watched him like I asked, or if you hadn't left your clothes on the floor, this wouldn't have happened," I replied, trying to remain calm. "How dare you blame me? This is all because you don't train your dog properly." My parents quickly joined the fray, taking Megan's side. "This is why pets are a responsibility you weren't ready for," my father lectured. "If you can't control that animal, it needs to go," my mother added. The argument escalated, with all three of them hurling insults not just about Max, but about my career, my lifestyle, and my character. "You don't even contribute anything to this household," Megan shouted, conveniently forgetting that I paid all the utilities and groceries. "We don't need you anymore," she continued, her face red with anger. "Get out, you work from home freeloader." My parents, instead of calming the situation, joined in. "That's right, Daniel. Maybe you should leave if you can't be respectful." Something inside me snapped. After months of intrusion, criticism, and disrespect, all while living in my home, this was the final straw. "Fine," I said quietly. "If that's how you feel, I'll leave." Their expressions showed momentary surprise. They hadn't expected me to agree so readily, but that surprise would be nothing compared to what was coming. I packed a suitcase with essentials, gathered Max's supplies, and calmly walked out. I checked into a pet-friendly hotel and made a few important phone calls. First to my lawyer, confirming what I already knew. As the legal owner of the house, the title had finally transferred to me on my birthday the previous month. I had every right to decide who lived there. Second, to a property management company I'd researched weeks ago when I first started contemplating an exit strategy. 3 days later, Megan called in a panic. "Daniel, what is going on?" "Some company left an eviction notice saying we have to vacate the property in 30 days. "Yes, that's correct," I replied calmly. But they said the owner is selling the house." "How can that happen?" "Grandpa's estate." "The house isn't in Grandpa's estate anymore, Megan. It was transferred to me last month, just as his will specified would happen on my 34th birthday. I am the legal owner, and yes, I've decided to sell it." The silence on the other end was deeply satisfying. You can't do this," she finally stammered. "We have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a personal problem," I replied, echoing the phrase she had often used when dismissing my concerns. "Perhaps you should have thought about that before telling me to get out of my own house." My mother got on the phone next, alternating between tears and anger. "How could you do this to your own family? The same family that moved into my home without proper discussion, criticized my career daily, and then kicked me and my dog out. That family." My father tried threats about family lawyers and inheritance, but we both knew they had no legal ground to stand on. In the end, they had no choice but to leave. My parents moved into a small apartment that strained their retirement budget. Megan, unable to afford a place of her own, had to move in with a friend from work, sleeping on a couch and paying whatever rent she could manage with her real job. The new beginning. I didn't sell the house after all. Once they were gone, I moved back in, had it thoroughly cleaned, and reclaimed my space. I made a few renovations, including converting one bedroom into a dedicated office with soundproofing and another into a guest room that would never be available to certain family members. Max thrived in the peaceful environment, quickly becoming fully house-trained without the stress and inconsistency of my family's presence. My business flourished too. Without constant interruptions and criticism, I secured several new clients and expanded my services. My parents and Megan eventually reached out with reluctant apologies, clearly hoping to repair the relationship enough to potentially move back in someday. I maintained polite but distant contact, making it clear that while I was open to gradually rebuilding our relationship, cohabitation was permanently off the table. But we're family, my mother protested during a carefully controlled coffee meeting 3 months later. Yes, we are, I agreed, and families should respect each other's boundaries, careers, and life choices. When you're ready to do that, we can work on being a family again. As I drive home from these occasional family meetings, Max always greets me at the door with unbridled enthusiasm. No criticism, no judgment, just pure joy. Sometimes the smallest companions provide the greatest lessons about what truly matters: respect, appreciation, and unconditional support. In the end, the house that became a battleground has transformed back into a home, on my terms. And if there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that standing up for yourself isn't just about asserting ownership of physical property. It's about claiming the right to live your life according to your own values, free from those who would diminish your choices. Max seems to agree. He has a particular way of tilting his head whenever I tell him, "We did the right thing, buddy." I like to think it's his way of saying, "Of course we did. Now, how about that walk you promised?" Daniel, who is this woman and why is she answering your phone at 11 p.m.? There was a long, deafening silence on the other end of the line. "Hello, I can hear you breathing," I pressed, my heart racing. "I'm sorry, who's calling?" A woman finally answered, her voice deliberately casual. "This is Rebecca, Daniel's wife." Another silence, shorter this time. "Oh, I didn't realize he was married." "My name is Rebecca, 34 years old, and I work as a financial analyst. Daniel and I have been married for 3 years, and I thought we had built a solid life together. We met at a charity fundraiser, dated for 18 months, and had what I considered a beautiful wedding with friends and family. We bought our townhouse a year later, and everything seemed to be progressing exactly as planned. I never would have discovered Daniel's betrayal if it weren't for a simple mistake, dialing his number from my office phone instead of my cell. It had been an exhausting day at work. I was closing a major account, and the client had requested last-minute changes to the proposal. By the time I finished, it was nearly 11 p.m., and I was one of the last people in the office. I reached for my cell phone to call Daniel and let him know I was finally heading home, only to discover the battery had died. Sighing, I picked up my office phone and dialed his number from memory. When a woman answered, I initially thought I had misdialed. But then I clearly heard Daniel's voice in the background saying, "Who is it?" That's when I asked the question that would change everything. "Daniel, who is this woman and why is she answering your phone at 11 p.m.? After the woman's reluctant admission that she didn't know Daniel was married, I heard a scuffle, and then Daniel's voice came on the line. "Rebecca? What? Why are you calling from this number?" "My phone died," I replied coolly, surprised by how calm I sounded despite the hurricane forming inside me. "More importantly, who just answered your phone?" That's just Melissa from work. We're finishing up a project and..." "At your apartment?" "At 11 p.m. My voice remained steady, but my hand gripped the office phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "It's not what you think," he stammered. "I think it's exactly what I think," I said. "Don't bother coming up with more lies. I'll be home in 30 minutes. I suggest your guest leaves before I arrive." I hung up the phone and sat motionless at my desk. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of building a life with someone I thought I knew, 3 years erased in a single phone call. When I arrived home, Daniel was pacing in our living room. The apartment smelled faintly of an unfamiliar perfume. "Rebecca, I can explain," he began as soon as I walked through the door. "Please do," I said, setting my briefcase down and crossing my arms. What followed was a convoluted story about a work emergency, how Melissa was a new team member who needed guidance on a presentation, and how they had simply lost track of time. "So you brought her to our home instead of staying at the office because..." I asked. "The cleaning crew came, and we had to leave. Look, I know it looks bad, but nothing happened. I stared at him for a long moment. Daniel, there's a wine glass with lipstick on it in the sink. I don't wear that shade. His face paled. He'd missed that detail in his hasty cleanup. Who is she really? I asked. After more denials and circular explanations, I finally said, I'm too tired for this tonight. I'm sleeping in the guest room. We'll talk tomorrow. I needed time to think to plan my next steps. I wasn't going to make any rash decisions while emotional. The next day, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. After Daniel left for the office, with a worried backward glance, I began my investigation. I had never been the type to snoop through my husband's things, believing that trust was fundamental to a healthy marriage, but that trust had clearly been misplaced. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his usual combinations. On my third attempt, our wedding date, I was in. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Emails between Daniel and Melissa going back 6 months. Dinner reservations. Hotel confirmations. Sweet nothings that made my stomach turn. Melissa wasn't from work. She was a woman he'd met at a conference in San Diego half a year ago. They had been carrying on their affair ever since, sometimes even when I was traveling for business. I forwarded the most incriminating emails to myself, took screenshots, and logged out. Then I called my older sister, Caroline. I need a lawyer, I told her after explaining the situation. Caroline, who had gone through a divorce 5 years earlier, gave me the name of her attorney. And you need a place to stay, she added. Come to my house. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm not leaving my home, I responded firmly. If anyone should leave, it's Daniel. Caroline didn't argue, knowing my stubborn nature. Instead, she offered to come over that evening for moral support when I confronted Daniel again. When Daniel returned from work, he found not only me waiting but also Caroline. His face fell when he saw her. What is this? He asked cautiously. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. I know about Melissa. The real Melissa, not your made-up coworker. Rebecca. I held up my hand to silence him. I've seen the emails, Daniel. I know about San Diego. I know about the Hilton downtown 3 weeks ago when I was in Chicago. I know everything. The color drained from his face as I placed printouts of the emails on the coffee table between us. How could you? I asked, my voice finally breaking. How could you do this to us? He buried his face in his hands. I don't know, he whispered. It just happened. Affairs don't just happen. Caroline interjected sharply. They're a series of deliberate choices. Daniel glared at her. This is between me and my wife. Your wife who you've been cheating on for half a year. Caroline shot back. I laid a hand on my sister's arm. It's okay. Daniel, I want you to leave. Tonight. Go to a hotel. Go to Melissa's. I don't care. But I need space to think. You're kicking me out of my own house? He asked incredulously. Our house, I corrected. And yes, I am. Unless you prefer, I leave and take half of everything we own with me right now. After more protests and attempts to make me reconsider, Daniel finally packed a bag and left. As the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the couch, the full weight of the situation finally hitting me. Caroline wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You did the right thing. Now we plan your next steps. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, financial assessments, and emotional breakdowns. Daniel called and texted incessantly, alternating between apologies, explanations, and accusations that I was overreacting. I blocked his number and communicated only through my lawyer. I learned that in our state, adultery could impact divorce proceedings, which was why documenting the evidence had been so important. A week after the discovery, I received a surprise visit at my office from a woman I had never met but immediately recognized from her social media pictures, Melissa. Mrs. Peterson, my assistant announced nervously, there's a Melissa Crawford here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting it's urgent. I could have refused to see her, but curiosity got the better of me. Send her in, Jenny, and please stay close by. Melissa entered my office with the hesitant steps of someone approaching a wild animal. She was younger than me, maybe 28, and dressed impeccably in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Thank you for seeing me, she said, remaining standing even after I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. What can I do for you, Melissa? I asked, my tone professional, as if she were any other visitor. I came to apologize, she said. I truly didn't know Daniel was married until your call that night. He told me he was divorced. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. And you believed him without ever seeing where he lived, without meeting any of his friends or family, without ever questioning why you could only see him on certain days and at certain times. She flinched at each question. I know how it sounds. I was stupid. Not stupid, I corrected. Willfully ignorant, perhaps. There's a difference. Melissa bit her lip. There's something else you should know. Daniel's been seeing someone besides me, a woman named Vanessa. I found out just last month, but I was too. She trailed off. Too in love with him to walk away? I finished for her. She nodded miserably. Do you have proof of this other relationship? I asked, my analytical mind immediately seeing the legal advantages. Yes, she said, reaching into her designer handbag and pulling out a USB drive. Text messages, photos. I was going to confront him with them, but then your call happened and everything exploded. I accepted the drive, my mind racing. Why are you giving me this? Because you deserve to know everything, she said, and because I want to make amends somehow. After she left, I examined the contents of the drive with my lawyer present. Melissa hadn't lied. Daniel had been juggling not 2 women but 3, including his wife. The evidence was damning and would prove invaluable in the divorce proceedings. 3 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. The terms were heavily in my favor. I kept the townhouse, received a significant portion of our joint assets, and Daniel was responsible for my legal fees. He caved quickly once we presented all the evidence, my lawyer commented as I signed the last page. Most cheaters do when they realize they can't talk their way out. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, relief, and determination. What about the other women? Did he end up with either of them? My lawyer shook her head. From what I understand, Melissa left him after meeting with you, and this Vanessa person disappeared when the affair became public. He's alone. Good, I said simply. The weeks following the finalization of my divorce were difficult but healing. I threw myself into work, accepted a promotion I had previously hesitated on because Daniel thought it would take too much time away from home, and began redecorating the townhouse to erase his presence. Caroline convinced me to join her for weekly yoga classes, something I had always dismissed as not for me. To my surprise, I found the physical exertion and mindfulness practice therapeutic. 6 months after that fateful late-night phone call, I received an email from Daniel. It was long and rambling, full of apologies and explanations about how he had been going through a personal crisis and never meant to hurt me. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. His crisis had become my opportunity to rediscover myself, to build a stronger foundation, and to recognize that I deserved better. 1 year after the divorce, I sold the townhouse. Despite the favorable terms of the divorce, there were too many memories there, both good and bad. I bought a modern apartment in a different part of the city, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the park. On the day I moved in, Caroline helped me arrange my furniture and hang artwork. As we shared a bottle of wine on my new balcony, she asked, "Do you ever regret it?" Finding out about Daniel, I considered the question seriously. No, I finally answered. I regret the years I spent with someone who didn't value our vows. But I don't regret discovering the truth, however painful it was. To truth then, Caroline said, raising her glass. And to new beginnings, I added, clinking my glass against hers. The unexpected call from my office phone had shattered the life I thought I had. But from those broken pieces, I had built something new, something stronger, something truly mine. And for that, ironically, I had Daniel to thank. 2 years after my divorce, I was waiting for a table at a new restaurant downtown when someone called my name. I turned to see Melissa, looking very different from our last encounter. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced by casual jeans and a simple blouse. "Rebecca," she said hesitantly, "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "I have a good memory," I replied neutrally. She nodded, understanding the unspoken meaning. "I'm in town visiting family and thought I recognized you. I just wanted to say," she paused, gathering her thoughts. "Thank you, in a way. Our conversation that day in your office was a wake-up call. I've made some big changes." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, and meant it. Are you doing okay?" she asked. I smiled, genuinely this time. Better than okay. My table was called then, saving us from further awkward conversation. As I followed the host to my seat, I realized I felt no anger toward Melissa anymore. She had been another victim of Daniel's deceptions, albeit a less innocent one than I had been. That evening, I updated my online dating profile for the first time in months. I had been hesitant to re-enter the dating world, fearful of being hurt again. But my chance encounter with Melissa had shown me something important. I had healed. The wound Daniel inflicted had scared over, and while it would always be part of my story, it no longer defined me. The next day, I received a message from a man named Thomas, a civil engineer whose profile spoke of honesty, communication, and building strong foundations, literally and figuratively. His message was thoughtful, referencing specific points from my profile, rather than sending a generic greeting. I smiled as I typed my response, not knowing where this might lead but open to the possibility of something new. The unexpected phone call 2 years ago had changed everything, but perhaps that change, painful as it was, had been necessary to bring me where I needed to be. Sometimes, the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to something better. All we need is the courage to step through them. The executive lounge felt like a fortress as I sat there watching Alexander Grant dominate the conversation. His tailored Italian suit and carefully maintained silver temples projected authority, while his patronizing smile revealed exactly how he viewed me, the inexperienced daughter who needed to be eased out of the company. "The numbers tell a clear story," he said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the quarterly report. "Since Martin's stroke 3 months ago, investor confidence has fallen 18%. The board is concerned about Nova's leadership transition. My name is Elena Novak, and 3 months ago my father suffered a debilitating stroke. Today, his oldest friend and company COO was attempting to strip me of my inheritance. Our shareholders require stability," Alexander continued, his voice a perfect blend of regret and determination. "They're uncomfortable with, let's be frank here, a 29-year-old art history major suddenly controlling a majority stake in a leading AI research company." The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their ergonomic chairs. They'd known me for years as Martin Novak's daughter, the woman who organized the company's charity auctions and appeared in family photos on my father's desk. The woman who, as far as they were concerned, had no technical knowledge, no business acumen, and no right to lead a company at the forefront of artificial intelligence. If only they knew. "Elena," Alexander leaned forward, my name sounding foreign in his mouth. "Your father would want Nova Industries to thrive. My proposal is quite generous. We'll purchase your shares at 15% above market value. You keep the family estate, the investment portfolio, maintain your lifestyle, but allow those of us who understand this industry to guide the company forward." I examined the proposal document before me, maintaining a carefully neutral expression. The generous offer would indeed leave me wealthy, but it would hand Alexander complete control of Nova Industries, the company my father and I had built from nothing. "And if I decline?" I asked quietly. Alexander's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "Then I'll be forced to call for a confidence vote. The board stands with me. They recognize you lack the qualifications to make decisions about advanced neural networks and machine learning frameworks." "I see." I closed the folder containing his buyout offer and asked, "What about Project Lazarus?" The room went silent. Project Lazarus was Nova's most closely guarded initiative, a revolutionary approach to human-AI interaction that could transform everything from healthcare to education. As far as the industry knew, it was my father's final breakthrough, still in development under Alexander's supervision. Alexander's confidence wavered momentarily. "Project Lazarus continues on schedule." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "So you understand the modifications I made to the neural mapping protocols last month? The ones that improved response accuracy by 36%. His expression went blank. Around the table, board members began exchanging confused glances. "What modifications?" Alexander demanded. "The original architecture had fundamental limitations," I stated calmly. "It couldn't process emotional nuance effectively. The revised framework I implemented allows for contextual understanding while maintaining computational efficiency." The whispers grew louder as Alexander's complexion reddened. "You expect us to believe you understand neural network architecture. You studied art history at Brown." I smiled, thinking about the past 6 years, the late nights working alongside my father, designing algorithms, solving problems that had confounded the field's leading experts. About our decision to keep my involvement confidential, knowing how the tech world would react to a young female developer, especially one related to the CEO. Actually, I said, standing up and walking to the room's central terminal. I've been working in AI development longer than most of your senior team, Alexander. I just did it under a different name. I typed rapidly, accessing a secure server. The wall screen filled with code, the core architecture of Project Lazarus. This coding structure looks familiar, doesn't it? I asked the executives. Remarkably similar to the work of Ain Vega, wouldn't you say? The effect was immediate. Everyone in the industry knew Ain Vega, the reclusive programming prodigy whose innovations had driven Nova's meteoric rise over the past 6 years. The genius who never appeared in public, never gave interviews, communicating only through academic papers and technical documentation. That's impossible, Alexander spluttered. Ain Vega is me, I said simply. Elena Novak Vega. My father and I decided early on that my work would be judged more fairly if people didn't know I was his daughter. So we created a persona, the brilliant developer who collaborated with Nova's founder. I displayed more files on the screen, years of development logs, correspondence between my father and me discussing technical details, video recordings of us working together in our home lab. My father wasn't just my parent. I continued, my voice firm despite the emotion threatening to break through. He was my mentor and collaborator. We built this company together. The only difference is he did it publicly while I worked behind the scenes. The board members were now examining their tablets where I had just sent comprehensive documentation of my work. Alexander looked as if he'd been struck. This is some kind of manipulation, he said weakly, a desperate ploy. Would you like me to explain exactly how the emotional context mapping functions work? I offered. Or perhaps you prefer to discuss the conversational inference engine I designed for our medical diagnostic division, the one you've been claiming to oversee these past 3 months. The next hour in the executive lounge was unlike anything anyone present had experienced. I walked them through Lazarus's architecture, explaining complex AI concepts with the ease of someone who had spent years immersed in the field. With each explanation, each technical detail I elaborated on, Alexander's face grew paler. But the patents, he finally interrupted, grasping for any thread. They're all in Martin's name. I pulled up another document. Actually, they're jointly held. Dad insisted on it, though I wanted to keep using the Ain Vega pseudonym. I smiled slightly at the memory. He said someday the world would need to know the truth. Dr. Liang, our head of research, leaned forward with growing excitement. The contextual processing framework, that was you. The one that solved our inference problems. I nodded. My father excelled at hardware integration, but software architecture was my strength. We complemented each other perfectly. That's why he never fully explained certain systems. Dr. Liang said, realization dawning on his face. He always referred us to Ain Vega's technical documentation. Because I wrote it, I confirmed. Dad and I had an arrangement. He managed the public face of the company, the investor relations, the partnerships. I focused on development, on solving the technical problems that kept us ahead of our competitors. Alexander had remained uncharacteristically silent, his eyes darting between me and his tablet as he desperately searched for a way to undermine my revelation. Even if this is true, he finally said, running a tech company requires more than just technical knowledge. It demands business strategy, leadership qualities. You mean like the qualities I used to secure our partnership with Hirana Robotics? I interrupted. The deal I negotiated while using the Ain Vega identity. More murmurs around the table. The Hirana partnership had been transformative. A $250 million collaboration negotiated entirely through digital channels with the mysterious Ain Vega. That's right, I continued. I handled most of our key strategic partnerships. The partners actually preferred dealing with Ain Vega. They said they'd never encountered someone who understood both the technical and commercial implications so thoroughly. I displayed a new slide showing Nova's growth trajectory over the past 6 years. Every major breakthrough, every significant advancement had emerged after Ain Vega joined the company after I began working with my father. This is ridiculous, Alexander snapped, finally losing his composure. You expect us to believe that all this time, while you were playing the dutiful daughter at company events, You were secretly a programming prodigy. No, I said calmly. I expect you to examine the evidence before you and make a rational decision about what's best for Nova Industries. I turned to address the entire board. I understand your concerns about leadership, but ask yourselves, who truly knows Nova's technology? Who understands its potential and how to realize it? The person who created our core innovations or the person who's been trying to take credit for them? The executives exchanged glances. Dr. Lang cleared his throat. Ms. Novak, Elena, why reveal this now? Why not continue as in Vega? I thought about my father, about our conversations about the future of technology and the company we built together. Because my father was right, I said. The world needs to know that innovation doesn't conform to preconceptions. That breakthrough ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their age, gender, or whether they fit the tech industry's stereotype of what a genius should look like. I displayed one final document, the last email my father had sent me just days before his stroke. My brilliant Alina, never let anyone define your capabilities. If anything happens to me, don't remain in the shadows. Show them who you really are. Show them what we've built together. All my love, Dad. I spent 6 years hiding my true identity. I said quietly, I won't do it anymore. This company needs leadership that understands both its technology and its vision. I am that leader, whether you choose to accept that or not. Alexander stood abruptly. This is all very dramatic, but it doesn't change the fact that I have the board's support. I moved to call for an immediate vote on my proposal to purchase Elena's shares. I smiled. Actually, Alexander, I don't think you do have the board's support. Not anymore. Dr. Lang was already shaking his head. Not after this revelation. Elena, or N Vega, has been the driving force behind every major advancement we've made. We'd be fools to let her go. Other board members nodded in agreement. Alexander looked around the room, watching his carefully constructed plan disintegrate. This isn't over, he said, gathering his materials. I'll have the legal team review everything. If there's even a hint of fabrication, of backdated documents or falsified records, you'll find everything in perfect order, I interrupted. My father and I were meticulous with our documentation, but by all means, have your lawyers investigate. While they do, I'll be focusing on completing Lazarus's clinical trials unless you'd like to explain to our shareholders why you're trying to oust the person who actually developed it. He stormed out of the lounge, leaving a weighted silence behind. Dr. Lang was the first to speak. I think we've all underestimated you, Elena, some of us for years. I thought about all the board meetings I'd attended quietly, all the times I'd listened to Alexander and others dismiss or minimize what my father and I had built. Yes, I said simply, you have. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The weeks following my revelation transformed everything. News of Ain Vega's true identity hit the tech world like a tidal wave. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The founder's daughter, who turned out to be a brilliant developer, the woman who had revolutionized AI while letting others take public credit. Ms. Novak, a journalist from Innovation Quarterly, asked during my first public interview, why maintain the deception for so long? Did he resent not receiving recognition for your work? I sat in my office, my father's former office, looking at his photograph on the desk. It was never about recognition, I said. My father and I understood how the tech industry would respond to a young female developer, particularly one related to the founder. We wanted our work to be judged on its merits, not clouded by prejudice or assumptions. The reporter nodded. And Alexander Grant? Sources say he's challenging the authenticity of your contributions. I smiled, thinking of Alexander's increasingly desperate attempts to discredit me. His legal team had spent weeks examining every line of code, every patent filing, every piece of documentation. Mr. Grant is entitled to his doubts, I replied. The code speaks for itself. What I didn't mention was the message I'd received that morning from Alexander's attorneys, quietly withdrawing their challenges. They'd found nothing because there was nothing to find. Every innovation had been meticulously documented, jointly credited to my father and me from the beginning. The real surprise came a week later when I arrived at the office to find Dr. Liang waiting with an unusual request. The development team wants you to conduct a code review, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. In person. They've been working with In Vega's documentation for years, but now they want to learn directly from you. I spent the afternoon in our main development lab, surrounded by engineers who had once seen me only as the founder's daughter. Their respect wasn't forced or reluctant. It was earned, line of code by line of code, as I guided them through the systems I had designed. "It all makes sense now," one young programmer said. "The elegant solutions, the innovative approaches, they had your signature all along. We just didn't know what to look for." That evening, as I was preparing to leave, Dr. Liang appeared in my doorway. "The board has been discussing Nova's future," he said without preamble. "We'd like to formalize your position as CEO." I looked up from my monitor, where I'd been reviewing the latest Lazarus test results. "And Alexander?" "He's resigned, effective immediately," Dr. Liang said with a slight smile. "His final attempt to challenge your work backfired rather spectacularly. It turns out several of his innovations were actually incomplete adaptations of your prototypes." I wasn't surprised. Alexander had always been better at claiming credit than creating original work. "There's something else," Dr. Liang continued. "We've received inquiries from several major tech companies about potential collaborations. It seems Ian Vega's reputation carries even more weight now that people know the full story." I thought about my father, about our dreams for Nova Industries. "What kind of collaborations?" "Stanford Medical wants to discuss implementing Lazarus in diagnostic training. Microsoft is interested in integrating our emotional context framework into their virtual assistant ecosystem. And NASA," he paused for effect, "wants to talk about AI-supported decision systems for their deep space missions." I looked at my father's picture, remembering our late-night conversations about technology's potential to transform lives. "Schedule the meetings," I said. "But make it clear I'll be representing Nova as myself. No more pseudonyms, no more shadows." The next month was a whirlwind of presentations, negotiations, and media appearances. I spoke at technology conferences, gave interviews to major publications, and established mentorship programs for young women in STEM. The story of Ian Vega became a rallying point for change in the tech industry. Alexander, meanwhile, had vanished from public view. The last I heard, he was attempting to launch his own AI startup, but investors were wary. His reputation for appropriating others' work had spread quickly. 1 year after my revelation in the executive lounge, I stood on stage at the International AI Summit, preparing to unveil Lazarus's public launch. The audience was packed with industry leaders, investors, and media representatives. Artificial intelligence isn't just about computational power. I began looking out at the sea of attentive faces. It's about recognizing patterns others miss, about having the courage to pursue solutions that seem impossible. I displayed the first slide, a photo of my father and me in our basement workshop where we'd built our first neural network prototype. "This is where Nova Industries truly began," I continued. "Not in a corporate headquarters or university lab, but in a home workshop where two people dared to dream beyond conventional limitations. One of those people worked in the spotlight while the other created in the shadows. Today, we're bringing those creations into the light." The presentation was a triumph. Lazarus's capabilities exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Our stock price soared, and more importantly, we were changing the future of human-AI interaction forever. After the presentation, as I was gathering my materials, I found a note that had been placed with my belongings. "Alana, I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry." "Alexander." I folded the note and put it away. His apology meant little now, but at least he'd have finally acknowledged the truth, that innovation doesn't care about age, gender, or appearances. It cares about brilliance, determination, and the courage to stand in the light. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the equipment where my father and I had spent countless hours working together. On my screen was the code for our next breakthrough, an AI system that could revolutionize climate science research. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to his photograph. "The world did need to know the truth, and now they do." I began to type, my fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard as new ideas flowed. But this time, I wasn't hiding behind a pseudonym or working in the shadows. I was Alina Novak, CEO of Nova Industries, writing code that would help solve humanity's greatest challenges. And I was finally completely myself. We've reviewed the evidence. The transfers came from your account, your credentials were used, and the money trail leads directly to your personal finances. The executive committee's words echoed in the conference room as I stared at the spreadsheet projected on the wall. 12 transactions over 6 months, all pointing to me. This is impossible, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I've never touched a penny of company money. The evidence suggests otherwise, Rachel said. Victor, my husband of 8 years and the company's CFO. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We've already contacted the authorities. The betrayal in that moment, watching my husband side with his colleagues against me, crystallized something I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't just about missing money. This was the culmination of a marriage built on control and manipulation. What Victor and the executive team never anticipated was that being accused would become my salvation, and that Melissa Chen, the quiet forensic accountant they'd brought in to build the case against me, would become the ally who helped me uncover a truth more shocking than I could have imagined. Victor and I met when I joined Meridian Technologies as a marketing director. He was already established as the financial wonderkind who had helped take the company public. We had been married for 8 years. Our 6-year-old son, Ethan, was the light of my life. The problems began subtly. First came the suggestions about my career choices. Wouldn't it be easier if you moved to a less demanding role? Victor would ask whenever I mentioned a stressful day. When I became pregnant with Ethan, Victor's suggestions became expectations. After months of arguments disguised as discussions, I agreed to step back from my director position and take a part-time consulting role that allowed me to work from home. Victor took control of our finances completely. I'm the CFO. He would remind me whenever I questioned a decision. Managing money is literally my expertise. He set up a system that gave me access to a household account with a modest monthly allowance. I remember one evening, about 2 years into this arrangement, I had discovered a promising investment opportunity through a former colleague and wanted to use some of my remaining savings to participate. I've already looked into that company, Victor said dismissively. Their fundamentals are shaky. You'd be throwing your money away. I've done my research, I countered. Their new patent has incredible potential. Victor's expression changed then. He walked to his home office without a word and returned with a folder, which he placed on the table between us. Do you know what this is? He asked quietly. I shook my head. It's a complete analysis of our financial situation if we were to divorce, he explained, opening the folder to reveal pages of spreadsheets and legal notes. I update it quarterly, just being pragmatic. The message was clear. This is what you'd walk away with. This is what you'd lose. Choose carefully. After that night, the folder became Victor's subtle weapon. He never needed to explicitly threaten divorce again. A simple reference to updating some paperwork was enough to remind me of my vulnerability. And then there was his mother, Eleanor, who reinforced every aspect of Victor's control with her own particular brand of criticism. Rachel, darling, you look absolutely exhausted, Eleanor Harrington declared as she swept into our home using the key Victor had given her, against my wishes. But I've brought something to cheer you up. Eleanor was the widow of a banking executive and moved through the world with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned. She had raised Victor alone after her husband's early death, and their relationship crossed the line from close to codependent long ago. She would visit at least twice weekly, inspecting our home with the scrutiny of a drill sergeant, offering helpful suggestions that were thinly veiled criticisms, and reporting my perceived failings back to Victor. Eleanor's influence extended beyond our home. As a major shareholder in Meridian Technologies and the widow of one of its early investors, she wielded considerable power in the company. She sat on the board, attended every executive function, and made it known that her son was her pride and the company's future. It was at one such function, the annual shareholders' gala, that the foundation for my current nightmare was laid. Victor tells me you've been asking questions about the company finances, Eleanor said, cornering me by the dessert table. I hope you're not causing difficulties for him at work as well as at home. I was just interested in how the new acquisition was being funded, I replied, keeping my tone light despite the accusation. As a consultant for the company, albeit in a reduced role, I have legitimate reasons to understand major business moves. Finance is Victor's domain, she said firmly. Your little marketing projects don't require you to concern yourself with the real business decisions. That night, as we drove home from the gala, I finally voiced what had been building for months. I can't keep doing this, Victor. I feel like I don't have a say in my own life anymore. Not in our finances, not in our parenting decisions, not even in my career. Victor kept his eyes on the road. You agreed to all of these arrangements. No one forced you. Under pressure, I clarified. And things have gone far beyond what I agreed to. Your mother has more say in our family decisions than I do. Victor pulled the car into our driveway and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, his words fell like stones. Perhaps you should consider whether you're really suited for this life, Rachel. Not everyone is cut out to be part of the Harrington family. It was the closest he had come to an outright threat of divorce in years. The unspoken conclusion hung between us. And if you're not suited for this life, you certainly aren't suited to raise a Harrington child. After the gala confrontation, I began paying closer attention to the company's operations. What had started as casual interest became more focused as I noticed irregularities in project budgets that crossed my desk. 2 months after the gala, I received a meeting request from the executive committee, a group that included Victor and was chaired by Eleanor. When I arrived, I found not only the executive committee but also 2 people I didn't recognize who were introduced as external auditors. Rachel Harrington, began Eleanor, using my married name with unusual formality. We've asked you here today because a routine audit has uncovered some concerning financial activities linked to your department and your personal authorization. For the next hour, they laid out their case, a systematic embezzlement scheme that had diverted just over $400,000 from the company into what they claimed was my personal account. They had emails, authorization codes, and transfer records, all with my digital fingerprints. This is insane, I said when they finally finished. I don't have access to those kinds of funds or authorization levels. Actually, you do, Victor interjected, sliding a document across the table. Your consulting contract includes administrative access to certain marketing budgets. These transfers were disguised as payments to vendors you personally approved. I stared at the contract, my contract, with sections highlighted that I didn't remember. This isn't the contract I signed. It's the executed version on file with HR, said one of the auditors. Are you suggesting the company falsified its own records? The room felt airless. I looked around at the faces of people I'd worked with for years. Their expressions ranged from disappointment to disgust. Only one person wasn't looking at me with predetermined judgment, a young woman sitting slightly apart from the others, who had been introduced as Melissa Chen from the forensic accounting team. She was watching the exchange with narrowed eyes, her focus moving between me and Victor. I want a lawyer, I said finally, and copies of all of these records. As the meeting concluded, Victor approached me. I've moved some things to the guest house, he said quietly, for the sake of appearances and Ethan. I think it's best if you stay there until this is resolved. My mother will help with Ethan. I felt a cold clarity descend. You planned this, I said, the pieces suddenly fitting together. All of it. As I left the conference room, Melissa Chen stepped into the elevator with me. She didn't speak until the doors closed. Mrs. Harrington, she said in a low voice, I think you need to know that there are inconsistencies in what you just saw. The timestamps on some of those authorizations don't align with the server logs. It's subtle, but it's there. What are you saying? I asked, barely daring to hope for an ally. I'm saying the evidence looks too perfect, she replied. And in my experience, perfect evidence usually isn't. The elevator reached the lobby, and she stepped out. Check your personal email in an hour, she said without looking back. The guest house on our property was a beautiful prison. I was permitted supervised visits with my son, during which Eleanor was always present, watching and listening. Mommy, when are you coming back to the big house? Ethan asked during one such visit, his small face troubled. Soon, sweetheart, I promised, though I had no idea if it was true. Mommy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up stuff. Grandma says you took things that didn't belong to you, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I told her you always make me put back toys at the store, so I know that's not true. My heart broke at his simple faith in me. That's right, Ethan, and we'll figure this out, I promise. True to her word, Melissa had sent me a message within an hour of our elevator conversation. The external audit was requested 6 months ago, before any of the transfers occurred. The system logs show your credentials being used at times when you were documented elsewhere. There are discrepancies in the digital signatures. Over the next 2 weeks, Melissa became my lifeline to sanity. Her messages were always factual and precise, detailing what she was finding as she dug deeper into the financial records. "The account where the funds were sent isn't actually yours," she wrote in one message. "It's registered to a shell corporation that was created 8 months ago. Someone went to considerable trouble to create a paper trail connecting you to this company. Why are you helping me?" I finally asked in one of our carefully encrypted exchanges. "You're putting yourself at risk." Her reply came hours later. 3 years ago, I was in a similar position at another company. No one believed me then. I lost my job, my reputation, and nearly my freedom. I promised myself I would never stand by if I saw it happening to someone else. With Melissa's guidance, I began building my own case. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Eleanor's personal assistant, Diane, who had worked for the Harrington family for over 20 years. We met at a small cafe 2 towns over, where Diane nervously slid a USB drive across the table. "I've worked for Mrs. Harrington since Victor was in college," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen things over the years, questionable things. But I told myself it wasn't my place to judge. But framing you, potentially sending you to prison, I can't be part of that." "What's on the drive?" I asked. "Emails between Mrs. Harrington, Victor, and James Whitley from the board. They've been systematically siphoning money from Meridian for years, using it to cover investment losses in a separate venture. And I became the scapegoat," I concluded. Deanne nodded. "You started asking questions, and Victor has been seeing someone else. For almost 2 years now. Eleanor approves. The woman comes from a family with connections they want. They've been planning to remove you from the picture for some time." The revelation should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange relief. The truth, however ugly, was finally coming to light. The emergency board meeting was held in Meridian's largest conference room, with all 24 board members present. As the accused, I had been granted the right to address the board before they voted on whether to proceed with criminal charges. Victor looked surprised when I walked in with my lawyer, a digital forensics expert, and Melissa Chen. Alina's expression darkened at the sight of the forensic accountant she had personally hired, now apparently allied with me. For the next hour, we systematically dismantled the case against me. The digital forensics expert demonstrated how my credentials had been compromised and used when I was probably elsewhere. Melissa presented her findings on the discrepancies in the financial records. "What's most concerning," Melissa concluded, "is that the transactions in question appear to be part of a much larger pattern of financial irregularities going back several years, irregularities that long predate Mrs. Harrington's supposed involvement." I nodded to my lawyer, who distributed sealed envelopes to each board member. "What you're receiving is evidence of a long-term embezzlement scheme orchestrated by Eleanor Harrington, Victor Harrington, and James Whitley. The scheme has diverted approximately $3.2 million from Meridian Technologies over the past 5 years." The room erupted in chaos as board members opened their envelopes and began reviewing the documents inside. Victor's face had gone pale, while Eleanor remained rigidly composed, her eyes fixed on me with cold fury. "How dare you?" she said when the noise subsided enough for her to be heard. "After everything this family has done for you." "Family?" I interrupted. "Is that what you call it? Controlling my career, isolating me from my professional network, monitoring my finances, undermining my relationship with my son. That's not family, Eleanor. That's abuse." The board voted unanimously to place Eleanor, Victor, and James on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. They also voted to clear me of all accusations and to restore my position, though I declined the offer to return, having already accepted a director role at one of Meridian's competitors, arranged with Melissa's help. The months following the board meeting were challenging in different ways. The legal proceedings against Victor, Eleanor, and James became a media sensation. I did my best to shield Ethan from the worst of it, but children are perceptive. He knew his father had done something bad and wouldn't be living with us anymore. We moved from the Harrington estate to a modest but comfortable house closer to my new office. It was initially strange to have complete autonomy over my finances, my schedule, my home, to make decisions without anticipating criticism or control. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. Victor, facing criminal charges and desperate to salvage any favorable public opinion, agreed to generous terms regarding custody and financial support. Melissa Chen became a close friend and eventually a colleague when she joined my new company as head of financial compliance. Her courage in standing up for the truth despite personal risk reminded me of qualities I had suppressed in myself for too long. Ethan, now 7, was thriving in his new school and had recently announced his intention to become a money detective like Miss Melissa when he grew up. His resilience amazed me daily, as did his capacity for joy despite the upheaval in his young life. One evening, as I tucked him into bed, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, are you glad Dad did that bad thing with the money?" I sat down on the edge of his bed, considering how to answer honestly but appropriately. "I'm not glad he did something wrong, Ethan. What he did hurt a lot of people, including you and me. But I am glad that the truth came out because it helped us build a healthier life." He nodded, processing this. "Grandma says we used to be important and now we're not." I smiled gently. Being important isn't about having a big house or lots of money or a famous name. It's about being honest and kind and helping others when you can. By that measure, I think we're more important now than we ever were before. He seemed satisfied with this answer and snuggled deeper under his covers. "I like our life better now," he said sleepily. "You smile more." His simple observation brought tears to my eyes. He was right, I did smile more. Despite the scandal, the stress of rebuilding, and the challenges of single parenthood, I had found an authentic happiness that had been absent during my years with Victor. 2 years after the Meridian incident, I established a foundation partnering with several major corporations to develop ethics training specifically addressing power dynamics and financial manipulation in both professional and personal contexts. At the launch event, I found myself standing at a podium before hundreds of business leaders. In the back of the room stood Ethan, now 9. Watching proudly as his mother prepared to speak. He gave me a small thumbs up, and I felt a surge of gratitude for everything, even the betrayal, that had led us here. When I was falsely accused of embezzlement 3 years ago, I discovered that the most valuable currency isn't money, power, or influence. It's truth and the courage to stand for it, even when you stand alone. As I shared our story with the audience, I realized that being framed hadn't destroyed me as Victor and Eleanor had intended. Instead, it had stripped away everything that wasn't essential and revealed a core of resilience I hadn't known existed. The betrayal that was meant to end my story had instead become its most transformative chapter. In losing what I thought was security, I had found something far more valuable. Authentic freedom, purpose born from pain, and the profound knowledge that our worst moments can become the foundation for our best selves. I ended my speech with a simple truth that had become my guiding principle. Sometimes the thing that seems like it will break you becomes the very thing that sets you free. The moment my grandmother's painting sold for $8 million at Sotheby's, my phone exploded with messages. I silenced it, watching from the back of the auction room as art collectors and critics whispered excitedly about the rediscovered masterpiece by Elizabeth Morgan, the once forgotten female artist now experiencing a posthumous renaissance. None of them knew I was her granddaughter, or that the painting had been hanging in my childhood bedroom for 30 years. "Congratulations, Ms. Harmon," the auction house representative said afterward, shaking my hand firmly. "Your grandmother's work has certainly found its rightful place in art history." I nodded, still processing the surreal experience of watching strangers bid millions for the canvas my grandmother had gifted me on my 8th birthday. The canvas my mother had tried to throw away during one of her drunken rages, calling it worthless, just like its creator. "When would you like us to transfer the funds?" the representative asked. "Next week is fine," I replied. I have some matters to attend to first. Those matters included the family gathering scheduled for tomorrow, the first time in 5 years all of us would be in the same room. My mother had insisted on it, claiming she needed to discuss important family business, given that she'd barely acknowledged my existence since I left home at 18. I suspected her sudden interest had something to do with the recent articles about Elizabeth Morgan's skyrocketing value in the art world. The next day, I pulled up to my mother's sprawling Victorian home in Westchester, the Morgan family seat for 4 generations. My cousin Rachel's BMW was already parked in the circular driveway alongside my brother Peter's Range Rover. I smoothed down my simple black dress, applying lipstick in the rearview mirror before stepping out. For once, I wanted to look completely put together when facing my family. Inside, Mother presided over the formal living room like a queen, elegantly arranged on her favorite chaise lounge despite being only 68. Her hair was perfectly colored and styled, not a strand out of place. Rachel sat nearby, scrolling through her phone, while Peter stood by the fireplace, drink already in hand by 11 in the morning. "Catherine," my mother acknowledged coolly as I entered, "you finally decided to join us." "Traffic was heavy," I lied, having deliberately timed my arrival to avoid pre-meeting small talk. "Your sister won't be joining us?" Mother asked, though it sounded more like an accusation. "Joanna's still in Tanzania with Doctors Without Borders," I reminded her, "as I mentioned when you called." Mother waved this away as if international humanitarian work was a flimsy excuse for missing family obligations. "Well, we'll have to proceed without her. Franklin will be joining us shortly." Franklin Whitmore had been my mother's lawyer since before I was born. His arrival confirmed my suspicions that this family meeting had financial implications. Rachel finally looked up from her phone, her expression animated for the first time. "Is this about grandmother's paintings?" I saw the Sotheby's auction results. $8 million. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be thrilled, Catherine. How lucky that you had that painting all these years." "Luck had nothing to do with it," I replied evenly. "Grandmother gave it to me." "Yes, before anyone knew what those paintings would be worth," Peter interjected, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "If she'd known, I doubt she would have handed it to an 8-year-old. I bit back a retort as Franklin entered the room, briefcase in hand. After perfunctory greetings, he settled into an armchair and opened his case. "As you all know, my mother began. My mother, Elizabeth Morgan, has recently become rather commercially valuable in the art world. This unexpected development has created certain complications regarding family assets." "There are no complications," I said quietly. "Grandmother gave me that painting as a gift. I have the letter she wrote with it." "A letter that conveniently appeared just as her work started gaining recognition," Peter muttered. "Catherine," Mother continued as if I hadn't spoken, "we all know my relationship with my mother was strained. But that doesn't change the fact that her work represents our family legacy. Franklin has prepared documents establishing a family trust for all of Elizabeth Morgan's remaining works and the proceeds from their sales." Franklin began distributing folders. The Morgan Family Art Trust would manage all known works by Elizabeth Morgan, with profits distributed equally among all direct descendants. This would include the proceeds from the recent Sotheby's sale. I felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. "So you want me to hand over $8 million to a trust you control, after you spent my entire childhood telling me grandmother was a disgrace to the family, after you tried to throw away her paintings, after you forbade me from even speaking her name in this house?" "Don't be dramatic, Catherine," Mother sighed. "This isn't personal. It's about preserving family assets." "Actually," I said, opening my handbag and removing a slim folder of my own, "this is very personal, but not in the way you think." I placed the folder on the coffee table. 3 months ago, when the MoMA retrospective of grandmother's work was announced, I hired an investigator. I wanted to locate any of her paintings that might still exist outside museums. What I found instead was much more interesting. The room had gone very quiet. Even Peter had stopped drinking. "Elizabeth Morgan didn't just leave paintings," I continued. "She left a detailed journal, which has been in the possession of her former gallery owner's family for the past 30 years, along with some very interesting correspondence." "What kind of correspondence?" Rachel asked, unable to hide her curiosity. I removed several photocopied pages from the folder. Letters that explained why grandmother left so suddenly in 1979, why she never returned to this house, why she was erased from our family history. Mother had gone very still, her hands gripping her armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. "It seems grandmother discovered that her husband, our grandfather, had been systematically selling her paintings and keeping all the money. When she confronted him, he threatened to have her committed to a psychiatric institution if she tried to leave or take legal action. Back then, it was still disturbingly easy for a husband to do that to his wife." I looked directly at my mother, but what's most interesting is that there was someone who helped him cover it all up. Someone who continued selling grandmother's works secretly even after grandfather died. someone who knew exactly how valuable those paintings would eventually become. Peter was watching our mother now too, his expression unreadable. Grandmother didn't abandon her family as we were always told, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building inside me. She was driven away, then systematically erased and discredited, made to sound unstable and selfish when in reality she was the victim. I pulled out one final document, a bank statement. This is a numbered account in the Cayman Islands. It contains just over $30 million from the sale of Elizabeth Morgan paintings over the past 4 decades. Mother has been the sole signatory since grandfather's death in 1992. The silence in the room was deafening. Rachel's mouth had fallen open, while Peter stood frozen by the fireplace. You stole from your own mother, I said to my mother, whose face had become a rigid mask. You helped grandfather push her out, then continued selling her work while telling us she was nothing. You have no idea what you're talking about, Mother finally hissed, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, I do. Grandmother's journal explains everything in detail. She kept track of every painting, every sale she knew about. And her gallery owner kept records too. Records I now have. As for the ones she didn't know about, I nodded toward the bank statement. The money tells its own story. Franklin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Diane, if these allegations have merit. They don't, my mother snapped. Catherine has always had an overactive imagination, just like her grandmother. I smiled thinly. The New York Times doesn't think so. They're running an investigative piece next Sunday on the lost years of Elizabeth Morgan, including the family conspiracy that kept her from receiving recognition during her lifetime. I've given them copies of everything. Peter finally spoke, his voice hollow. Is this true, Mother? When she didn't answer, her silence was confirmation enough. There won't be a family trust, I said, standing up. The painting was mine to sell. The 7 remaining paintings in grandmother's studio apartment, which she left specifically to me in her will, the will you told me didn't exist, are also mine. As for grandmother's estate and the proceeds from the sales you conducted illegally over the years, I glanced at Franklin, who looked increasingly distressed. I suggest you consult with a criminal attorney. Art fraud across state lines is a federal offense. You would do this to your own mother? Mother asked, finding her voice at last. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied calmly. I'm simply revealing the truth you've hidden from all of us for decades. As I turned to leave, Rachel called after me. Catherine, wait. What happens now? To the family? I paused at the doorway, considering her question. Rachel and Peter had been shaped by the same toxic family dynamics I had escaped. They hadn't known the truth either. That depends on all of you, I said finally. Grandmother is being honored with a permanent gallery at the Museum of Modern Art next month. I'll be speaking at the opening. You're welcome to attend, to hear about who she really was, not the version of her we were taught to despise. I left them sitting in stunned silence, the weight of decades of family secrets hanging in the air between them. Outside, the spring air felt cleansing against my skin. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free of the Morgan family legacy, not the legacy of paintings and wealth that my mother had coveted, but the legacy of lies and silence that had shaped all our lives. 3 weeks later, I stood at the podium in the Elizabeth Morgan Gallery at MoMA, looking out at the assembled crowd of art critics, collectors, and museum patrons. To my surprise, in the back row sat Peter and Rachel, their expressions solemn but attentive. My mother was notably absent. Last I'd heard, she was consulting with lawyers about the impending investigation. Elizabeth Morgan painted truth as she saw it. I began, gesturing to the vibrant canvases surrounding us. In an era when women were expected to be decorative and agreeable, she created art that was challenging and profound. She paid a heavy price for that authenticity, losing her family, her home, and for many years, her rightful place in the art world. I paused, making eye contact with my siblings at the back of the room. But the truth, once buried, has a way of resurfacing. Like these paintings that spent decades in storage or hanging unrecognized on walls, Elizabeth Morgan's story has finally emerged into the light, and with it comes an opportunity for healing, for reconciliation, and for justice delayed but not denied. After the ceremony, Peter approached me hesitantly, Rachel trailing behind him. Your speech was beautiful, my sister said softly. I wish I had known her. So do I replied. It was the first genuine moment we'd shared in years. Peter cleared his throat. I've been thinking about what you said, about the truth having a way of resurfacing. He looked uncomfortable but determined. There are some papers in Father's study, correspondence between him and Mother about grandmother. Things I found years ago but didn't understand at the time. You should have them. I studied my brother's face, seeing something new there, perhaps the beginning of honesty. Thank you, Peter. What will happen to Mother? Rachel asked, her voice low. That's up to the authorities now, I said. And to her. Whether she finally tells the truth or continues to deny it. Later that evening, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by my grandmother's paintings, vibrant, challenging works that had finally found the recognition they deserved. On my coffee table lay the journal I'd recovered, filled with Elizabeth Morgan's thoughts, fears, and unwavering commitment to her art despite everything it cost her. On the final page, she'd written words that had become my mantra throughout this ordeal. The truth is never truly lost. It waits, patient as paint drying on canvas, for someone brave enough to see it. I had seen it. After decades of family secrets and lies, I had finally uncovered the truth about my grandmother, and about myself. I was Elizabeth Morgan's granddaughter, not just in blood, but in spirit, and like her, I had found the courage to stand in my truth, regardless of the cost. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with a Westchester area code. Catherine? My mother's voice sounded different, smaller somehow, without its usual imperial certainty. We need to talk. I took a deep breath, looking at my grandmother's self-portrait watching me from across the room. Her eyes fierce and knowing, her posture unyielding. Yes, I said finally, I think we do. Whether this conversation would bring healing or more pain remained to be seen, but at least it would begin with truth. After a lifetime of silence that felt like a masterpiece in itself. The day I discovered my grandfather's will had been altered, I was standing in the lobby of Mercer Publishing, watching as my debut novel climbed to number 3 on the digital bestseller board. My phone vibrated with a text from my brother Nathan. We need to talk. Now. I ignored it, savoring this moment I'd worked toward for a decade. The second text was more urgent. It's about Grandpa's estate. Pierce and Associates just called. I should have known something was wrong from the tension in Nathan's voice when I finally called him back. My grandfather, Edward Reynolds, founder of Reynolds Literary Empire, had passed away 3 weeks earlier at the age of 82. The legendary publisher had built his company from a small printing press in his garage to one of the most respected names in literature, and now, apparently, there was an issue with his will. They're saying Grandpa changed it, Nathan said, his words clipped and precise as always. 2 months ago, he left you 49% of Reynolds Literary. What? I gripped my phone tighter, stepping away from the celebrating publishing staff. That's not possible. We were each supposed to get 25%, with the remaining 50% going to the board. Well, clearly he changed his mind, Nathan replied, that familiar edge of bitterness creeping into his tone. The lawyer wants us both in his office tomorrow at 9. I could almost see my brother, tall and imposing in one of his expensive suits, pacing his corner office with its view of the Manhattan skyline. Nathan had been groomed since childhood to take over Reynolds Literary. As the oldest grandchild and only grandson, it had been assumed by everyone, including Nathan, that he would eventually run the company. I had chosen a different path, determined to make it as an author without trading on the family name. I'd even publish under a pseudonym. I'll be there, I said, already dreading the confrontation. The next morning, Pierce and Associates occupied the entire 32nd floor of a gleaming skyscraper. Nathan was already there when I arrived, sitting stiffly in the reception area. He barely acknowledged me with a curt nod, his eyes fixed on his phone. Olivia, he said by way of greeting, not looking up. Nathan. We'd never been close despite our mother's best efforts. The 10-year age gap meant that by the time I was forming coherent sentences, Nathan was already interning at Reynolds. While I'd spent my childhood with my nose in books, dreaming up stories, Nathan had been learning profit margins and acquisition strategies at our grandfather's knee. Mr. Pierce ushered us into a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Thank you both for coming, he said, shuffling through documents on the polished table. As I mentioned to Nathan yesterday, your grandfather made some significant changes to his will shortly before his passing. He slid copies of the document across the table to each of us. I skimmed through the legal jargon until I reached the relevant section. To my granddaughter, Olivia Grace Reynolds, I bequeath 49% of voting shares in Reynolds Literary Empire, with the express hope that she will bring her creative vision to the company that has long been the cornerstone of our family legacy. Nathan's inheritance remained at 25%, with the remaining 26% divided among longtime board members. This is outrageous, Nathan said, his voice dangerously calm. There must be some mistake. My grandfather would never have done this. Mr. Pierce adjusted his glasses. I assure you, Mr. Reynolds, the document is legitimate. Your grandfather was of sound mind when he made these changes. Was he? Nathan turned to me, eyes narrowed. What did you say to him, Olivia? How did you convince him to betray everything he built? I didn't know anything about this, I said, genuinely shocked. I haven't even spoken to Grandpa about the company in years. Right? Nathan scoffed. You were too busy playing at being a writer, pretending you weren't a Reynolds. His words stung, but they weren't entirely unfair. I had deliberately distanced myself from the family business, determined to succeed or fail on my own merits. If I may, Mr. Pierce interjected, there is a letter your grandfather left to be read in this event. He withdrew an envelope from his briefcase, breaking the seal with a silver letter opener. My dear grandchildren, he began reading, if you're hearing this, then the changes I've made to my will have come as a surprise, particularly to you, Nathan. This decision was not made lightly or hastily, but after careful consideration of the future of Reynolds Literary. Nathan, you have fulfilled every expectation I ever had for you in terms of business acumen. You understand the financial and operational aspects of publishing better than many industry veterans twice your age. But Reynolds Literary was never just a business to me. It was built on a passion for stories, for the written word, for ideas that challenge and transform. Olivia, your recent manuscript, yes, I knew E.L. Michaels was you, reminded me of why I started this company in the first place. Your gift for storytelling, your understanding of what moves readers. These are qualities that Reynolds Literary needs if it is to remain relevant in an industry that changes more rapidly each year. I am not choosing one of you over the other. I am giving Reynolds Literary what it needs, both of you working together, combining business savvy with creative vision. I have arranged matters to ensure that major decisions require both your approvals, making you true partners in this endeavor. Please do not view this as my final judgment on either of your worth, but rather as my last attempt to secure the future of something I've loved all my life. All my affection, Edward Reynolds. There was silence when Mr. Pierce finished reading. I stared at the table, stunned. Nathan had gone completely still. This is ridiculous, he finally said, standing so abruptly his chair nearly toppled backward. I'm contesting the will. My grandfather was clearly not in his right mind. That is your prerogative, Mr. Reynolds, Pierce said calmly, but I should inform you that your grandfather anticipated this reaction. He underwent 2 separate mental competency evaluations before making these changes and had the signing witnessed by 3 independent parties, including 2 physicians. It would be extremely difficult to successfully challenge this will. Nathan looked stricken. He turned to me, and for the first time in years, I could read his expression perfectly, betrayal. Nathan, I started, but he cut me off with a sharp gesture. Don't, he said. Just don't. He gathered his copy of the will and left without another word. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings and introductions to the Reynolds Literary Board of Directors, most of whom regarded me with barely concealed skepticism. I couldn't blame them. I was an outsider, the granddaughter who had deliberately chosen a different path, now suddenly holding the largest stake in the company. Nathan avoided me entirely, communicating only through his assistant or lawyers. The company continued to function, but the tension was palpable. Longtime employees whispered in hallways, taking sides in a battle I hadn't asked for. A week after the reading of the will, I finally worked up the courage to visit my grandfather's office, still untouched since his passing. It was a magnificent space, wood-paneled and lined with first editions of books he had published over his 60-year career. I sat in his leather chair, running my fingers over the worn desk blotter, trying to understand what he had been thinking. Something caught my eye, a small key taped to the underside of the desk drawer with my name written on the tape in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. The key fit a locked drawer in his credenza, which contained a single item, a leather-bound journal. Inside were my grandfather's thoughts on books and authors he'd worked with, business decisions, family matters. The most recent entries detailed his concerns about Reynolds Literary, about how the company had gradually shifted from its original mission of publishing groundbreaking literature to focusing primarily on guaranteed commercial successes. One passage in particular made my heart skip. Watched Nathan present the quarterly strategy today. Brilliant analysis, stellar projections. Everything a CEO should deliver. Yet something was missing, that spark of genuine passion for what these books contain, not just what they can earn. Later received Olivia's manuscript through the general submission portal. She doesn't know I've always kept an eye on her literary career. Stayed up all night reading. It has flaws, certainly, but also that rare quality that makes you forget you're reading words on a page. It reminded me of why I started this company. Perhaps I've been nurturing the wrong successor all these years, or perhaps I've been thinking too narrowly about what Reynolds needs. I read through pages of his internal debate, his concern for Nathan's feelings balanced against his worries for the company's soul. The final entry was dated just 3 days before he changed his will. Had Reynolds been merely a financial enterprise, Nathan would be the perfect heir. Had it been purely a creative endeavor, perhaps Olivia. But it has always been both, and separating those aspects has never worked. The solution seems obvious now. They need each other, just as this business has always needed both commerce and art to survive. Nathan will resist. He sees compromise as weakness. Olivia may doubt herself. She's avoided responsibility in the family company for so long. But together, they might just create something greater than I ever could. Sometimes the wisest choice isn't choosing at all, but finding a way for opposing forces to strengthen rather than destroy each other. I closed the journal, my eyes stinging. My grandfather had seen something I had missed, that running from my family legacy wasn't the same as forging my own path. That evening, I did something I should have done days earlier. I drove to Nathan's apartment and took some notes. He looked surprised to see me and opened the door, then immediately guarded. "What do you want, Olivia?" "5 minutes of your time," I said, holding up my grandfather's journal. "Please." Reluctantly, he stepped aside to let me in. His apartment was immaculate and honest, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves containing carefully organized postpositions. The Reynolds family obsession none of us could entirely escape. "When I was in Grandpa's office," I said, placing the journal on his glass coffee table. "I think you should read it." Nathan eyed the book suspiciously. Another posthumous manipulation. "Just the truth," I replied, "his real reasons, and he wasn't wrong, Nathan." "About what?" "About passing over me for someone who has never shown the slightest interest in the family business." I took a deep breath. "About the fact that Reynolds needs both of us, your business sense and my creative perspective. He saw something neither of us was willing to admit, that we're stronger together than apart." "That's a convenient position now that you have controlling interest," he said bitterly. "I don't want to control Reynolds Literary," I said. "I want to help restore its balance. When was the last time we published something truly groundbreaking, Nathan? Something that wasn't a guaranteed commercial success, but might actually change readers' lives." A flicker of something, recognition, perhaps, crossed his face. "Read the journal," I said, moving toward the door. "Then, if you want to talk about the future of Reynolds, call me. If you still want to contest the will, well, that's your choice. But I don't think that's what Grandpa would have wanted, and I don't think it's what you want either, not really." 3 days later, my phone rang as I was making coffee in my small apartment. Nathan's name flashed on the screen. "I read it," he said without preamble when I answered. "And?" There was a long pause. He wasn't entirely wrong, Nathan finally admitted, the words sounding as if they'd been painfully extracted. "The company has drifted from its original mission." Another silence stretched between us. "I'm not giving up my role at Reynolds," he said firmly. "I wouldn't expect you to," I replied. "That's not what Grandpa wanted." "I don't know how to do this, Olivia." "How to share something I've always seen as mine." "I don't know how to help run a publishing company," I countered. "So I guess we both have things to learn." A week later, we held our first joint meeting with the Reynolds Literary Board. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife as Nathan and I took seats at opposite ends of the conference table. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly expecting a corporate civil war. Nathan cleared his throat, straightening his tie, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. For those who haven't heard, my sister and I have decided to honor our grandfather's wishes, he announced, his voice steadier than I expected. Reynolds Literary will now be led by both of us, combining our respective strengths to build on Edward Reynolds' legacy. The surprise on the board members' faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Our first initiative, I added, will be launching a new imprint focused on discovering innovative voices in literature, alongside our established commercial lines. The Reynolds New Voices initiative, Nathan continued, will seek out authors who might be overlooked by traditional publishing metrics, but who bring fresh perspectives to contemporary literature. As the meeting progressed, I watched my brother gradually shift from stiff formality to genuine engagement. When he spoke about diversifying the company's digital strategy, I could hear echoes of our grandfather's passion beneath Nathan's analytical approach. Later, as we walked together toward the elevator, an awkward silence fell between us. "This isn't going to be easy," Nathan finally said. "We don't exactly have a history of working well together." "No," I agreed, "but we have something better." "What's that?" "A common purpose, and maybe more in common with each other than we've been willing to admit." 6 months later, I stood beside Nathan at the launch party for Reynolds New Voices, watching as authors, agents, and editors mingled in the renovated lobby of the Reynolds building. The space had been transformed, with our grandfather's original desk, the one from his garage where he'd started the company, taking pride of place in the center of the room. "He would have loved this," Nathan said quietly, nodding toward an animated discussion between a young debut author and a veteran editor. "Yes," I replied, "he would." My brother had changed over these months, not dramatically, but noticeably. He still approached everything with clinical precision, but he developed a genuine interest in the creative side of the business. Meanwhile, I had discovered an unexpected aptitude for certain aspects of publishing operations. We were still learning, still disagreeing, sometimes heatedly, but the company was stronger for it. The first books from our new imprint were generating critical buzz, while the commercial divisions continued to provide the financial backbone Nathan managed so expertly. That evening, after the guests had departed, I found myself alone in my grandfather's office, my office now shared with Nathan. On the wall hung a newly framed piece, the first page of my grandfather's journal, displaying words that had become something of a mantra for us both. The worth of words lies not merely in what they earn, but in what they change. A truly successful book transforms both the reader and the world in which it exists. A truly successful publisher must do the same. Beneath it, in a frame of its own, was a note Nathan had found in his copy of the will, words our grandfather had written specifically for him. "The measure of a man is not in what he controls, but in what he builds. Build something remarkable, Nathan. Sometimes that requires letting go of what you thought you wanted to grasp something you never imagined." I traced my fingers over my grandfather's handwriting, thinking about the legacy he left us, not just a company, but a challenge to be better together than we ever could have been apart. Out in a hallway, I could hear Nathan talking with the night security guard, his voice echoing slightly in the empty building. Two grandchildren, as different as could be, now united in purpose. Not because we'd suddenly become the same, but because we'd finally learned to value the differences that once drove us apart. Our grandfather's final lesson hadn't been about publishing at all, but about family, about how the bonds between us, complicated and sometimes painful as they might be, were ultimately what gave meaning to everything else. As Nathan appeared in the doorway, I smiled at my brother, really smiled, without reservation, perhaps for the first time in years. "Ready to go?" he asked, holding my coat. "Yes," I said. "I think I am."